Good morning, Patriots. I'm Jay Delancey, founder and director of the Voter Integrity Project of North Carolina. It's July 27th, 2020. We're 99 days away from what Scott Adams calls an extinction election. So I figure, it's better late than never, but we're going to try and wake you up, show you what you can do if you're concerned about our electoral process and how we can possibly prevent Armageddon from happening on election day. So I want to start a little bit about who we are, and we'll go from there.
Voter Integrity Project.
The Voter Integrity Project.
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 Jay Delancey, the director of the Voter Integrity Project.
Good afternoon. A few years ago, I started an organization called Voter Integrity Project of North Carolina with a mission to ensure free and fair elections for our children and grandchildren. Soon the effort attracted computer programmers, paralegals, engineers, auditors, and even one team member with a PhD in database design.
Today we're going to talk to you about widespread absentee ballot fraud. And we're going to be riffing off of an interview done yesterday by the former congressman and now Trump Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. We'll play some of that, and then we'll show you why Mark Meadows is right. All right, first off, who we are. This is our website, voterintegrityproject.com. We are a 501c4 organization. We have a C3 that I will be able to talk about later, but for right now, you can contribute by going to that site. Eventually, we will have all the stuff you have on YouTube channel, like BitChute and other ways to hit the like button and whatnot. But for now, I just want to show you the website, and we're very active in this work, and you'll see that we'll go back to that summit and talk about it later, what we're looking for there. But for now, on with the show. These are some of the transcripts from yesterday's speech, and I'll cut right to it for the video.
I want to look ahead to the election. The president continues to warn that it's going to be rigged, that's his word, by mail-in ballots, even though there's no compelling evidence that mail-in ballots are tied to widespread voter fraud. Here he was with Chris Wallace.
I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see. Look.
Can you give a direct answer? You will accept the election?
I have to see. Look, I have to see.
Why does the president keep questioning the election, and why won't he say clearly, as every president has done before, that he'll accept the results?
Well, George, you talked earlier about no compelling evidence of any voter fraud as it relates to mail-in ballots. I would have to disagree with that.
I said widespread voter fraud.
Okay, widespread. Well, here's the thing is we haven't had widespread mail-in ballots. The Democrats see this as their panacea of being able to put a ballot in every mailbox and hope for the best. Listen, that's not the way that the voter integrity process needs to run, where you send a ballot to everybody. Absentee ballots, the request for absentee ballots is certainly something that's happened in a number of states, is certainly something the president supports. But as we look at that, we want to make sure that every vote counts, but that it's only one vote per person. You can't have ballot harvesting. We've seen ballot harvesting schemes in California, and I'm not suggesting that that there is widespread fraud there. But there certainly is fraud. There certainly is fraud.
There's so much to say on that, so much, and I want to. I guess we need to start by saying, you're right, Mark. You're right. The reason there's no widespread is because there hasn't been widespread absentee voting. And where there has been widespread absentee voting, we will make our point that there's been no real scrutiny of the process. And this is where we come in. You heard who we were at the beginning of this show. And what I want to talk about is what we've done. And not to brag on us, but to say, look, there are people on the ground, not just in North Carolina, but all across the country or in several states, who are doing similar work to what we're doing. And we've all flown below radar, and I'll show you why a little later. But first off, here's a guy you've never heard of. This is the guy on the left is named Pasco Parker with a nice t-shirt on. That's his mugshot. We got him arrested. I know, it seems awful intolerant of us. But Pasco had this habit of voting in multiple states, and we actually caught him voting in 3 states in the 2012 election. Took us a long time to prosecute him. The reason we were able to prosecute him is because of this man on the right. He's the district attorney. He's one of the rare district attorneys who prosecuted vote fraud, who cared about what we were doing. And he had some nice things to say about it.
This case against Mr. Parker would not have happened but for the work of the Voter Integrity Project. Because our local law enforcement officers, 1, don't have the time, and 2, don't have the expertise or the desire, and that goes back to the lack of time, to sit and really chase rabbits thousands and thousands of times until you find that one person that did vote in multiple areas. And by y'all doing it's huge, because it saves cutting through all this chaff to get to the one piece of wheat that's there. And when y'all do it and then bring that one piece of wheat to law enforcement, they can just focus on, okay, we know this person did it, now we just have to get the evidence to support it. As opposed to sitting down with a voter roll of, I mean, heck, the voter roll just from my own precinct, I think, is 10,000 people. Sitting through a voter roll of 10,000 people, wondering which one voted somewhere else.
All right, we did that. We used some proprietary research methods that we developed ourselves. And we did this because we had a lot of really smart people who loaned us some of their what we call surplus intellectual capital. So anybody can do this. In North Carolina, we did it, and we would help others do it in other states, and we have. We've mentored with other states. Each state has their own set of challenges. In North Carolina, I could go into it forever. The beauty of North Carolina is that the data is available. It's free. The same data will cost you a penny a voter in Alabama. So you're looking at one snapshot of the election rolls times 4 million pennies. That's $40,000. So there's no rhyme or reason to this. It should be public information. It is public information, but in some states, they wrote the law to prevent access by the public of this very critical information. We get it once a week. It's a snapshot once a week. Florida gives it away once a month. So it just depends on your state. The idea is to have it as often as possible and for it to be free of charge, because there's much work one can do if one has the talent and the time, the bandwidth, and yes, the mental chops to do the computation, the database work. But to this point, Mr. Bell, Attorney General, or rather District Attorney Bell, he was a rare bird because granted, Parker voted Republican, which made it easier to get a prosecution. We've had, in this case, it was a project we had called Flank, Florida and North Carolina. Yep, we named it that. In our Florida and North Carolina research of the 2012 voter rolls, we were able to turn over 147, I think it was, people who we had done a lot of research to prove that it was the same person who voted in both places. It was just either that or someone stole their identity, one or the other. There was no other option. Well, I'm sorry, a third option would be that there was an administrative mistake by an election official. And we don't know what that administrative mistake was because they won't show us. But this is just about all of them. I'd say 95% of our cases were not prosecuted. And it wasn't because they weren't legitimate. It was because they excused them away. Lo and behold, the only ones that were prosecuted were, well, it so happened that all 3 of our or 4 prosecutions, Pasco Parker got prosecuted twice, once in Tennessee and once in North Carolina. Of those 4, all 4 of them were Republican. And we'll tell you more about voter impersonation fraud later, not today. But in impersonation, we actually found one of those interstate voters a DA who cared about it, worked it, and got to the point where they realized that the mother had voted for the daughter using the daughter's Florida vote. So the crime was committed in Florida. So I drove down to Flagler County to talk to the state prosecutor or district attorney, if you will. And they wouldn't take a meeting. They talked to me on the phone, very rude. And they basically said, nope, we didn't do it. And now the statute of limitations over, so we can't do it. In Florida, there's a 3-year statute of limitation on vote fraud. North Carolina, it's a felony, and there is no statute of limitations on it. So we were able to get a prosecution here. Florida, how convenient. You know, if you don't catch it within 3 years, too bad, so sad. Or if you don't prosecute it within 3 years. So there are a lot of factors that stop us from getting prosecutions. It's not easy to get them. Did we get media coverage for this? Very little. We did get Fox News. I'm not going to bother with you showing you that today because I don't want to be on this thing forever. It might be on our, actually it may be on our YouTube channel as a standalone story. And if not, we'll find it. Just shoot me a note if you want to see it. Anyway, so that's kind of the problem. We, as the Attorney General, or the district attorney said, this, 10,000 voters in his county, and they can't sift through it. We did. We found ways to use software analysis and some proprietary methods, and we're able to do this. And we did it and handed it over to him. I can't tell you the number of times we do that, hand it over to election officials, and they just poo-poo it. We think the reason is because the people we caught were Democrats, and more about this later. That's enough for today on that side of the issue, and I'll review it one more time briefly. But for now, that's the environment. So we do know there is fraud of this nature. We found we're a private organization without all the access to the law enforcement databases that your Department of Justice might have, or someone who actually wants to find it might have in government, because they don't want to find it. But anyway, of those who do, we were able to find it and prove that this is a problem. So as a result of that, we can't find that many, but we know there are more out there. We have definitely found the tip of an iceberg. One election, 147 people. Parker, by the way, had been doing this since 2004. According to data, he had voted in 04, 08, and 12 in both Florida and North Carolina. And then in tracking him down, we looked into Tennessee because he was on the voter roll there. And lo and behold, he voted there in 2008, 2012. So the commissioner of elections there was a patriot, Mark Goines, and he was willing and able to prosecute. He found, fortunately, he persuaded the DA in Williamston County in the Nashville area to go ahead and prosecute. So we got a double prosecution, very rare. We've had Democrats in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, one of the two largest counties in the state of North Carolina. The DA, we handed him 2 cases of fraud, but they're both Democrats, and he made every excuse in the world not to do it. It helped him politically because our 2 Republican senators nominated him to be a U.S. attorney in North Carolina, and dang if he didn't get accepted, and we were not happy about it. He's the Western District, a guy named Andrew Murray. Enough name dropping. We were rounded around with Murray and could not get him to see it our way, and he just blew us off. And we think it was political, but he would say he had other excuses, but that's all they were. We even tried to dust him up after he got nominated, hoping that Trump would pull the nomination, but it was too late. So he's now a U.S. attorney. Great. Way to go, VIP. Yeah, you guys pick a fight with a U.S. attorney. Smart plan. Okay, anyway, we did it because we're either fearless or stupid, but someone's got to do it. So what is your role in all this? Okay, the bottom line to everything I'm talking about today is that absentee voter fraud is real. Now, the smarmy media will tell you there is no widespread evidence, but we know from doing this since 2011, we know a thing or two about this, that first off, election laws are rigged to prevent detection. There are many reasons for that. I won't go into too much, but here we go. The data that I talked about available each week, the state doesn't retain it. They just overwrite it. So you can't see a week-to-week longitudinal analysis. I'll go a little geeky on you, but you can't do that long-term analysis, or the state doesn't. Anybody can if you can download it. And so we found a way to do that. And so we do get away with that. Most people do not. They don't take the time, and the state doesn't do it. So number one, the laws are rigged to prevent. Number two, very low penalties for prosecution. They say in federal law, it's 5 years in the slammer, but that's federal law. And getting even them to prosecute has been very difficult. Believe me, we've tried, because these 147 people we found technically are guilty of a federal crime. They voted illegally in 2 states. That there's an interstate component to this, and we've spoken to U.S. attorneys about it. And, I think, honestly, I think their political overhead and the corruption within the cultural, long-term corruption within the Department of Justice, that between never Trumpers and just hardcore Democrats, one of our insiders in D.C. has estimated probably 75% of the DOJ is corrupt. So with that kind of federal corruption, and then at the state corruption, I had that as a bullet and took it off. Low penalties prevent prosecution. That's the excuse Murray used when in North Carolina, it's the lowest form of felony. It's a class I, as in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. It's not a class 1, which sounds really impressive. So if you're really, really a bad person, been to jail multiple times, it might get you thrown in jail for it. But realistically, it won't. The people we have gotten prosecuted, of the 3 we got prosecuted, 2 went to jail. Or no, I'm sorry. Parker went to jail, but it was for a different reason. It was because he was a flight risk, because he taunted the cop in North Carolina saying, "You'll never see me again." So when they caught him in Tennessee, they held him for extradition. So Parker's own mouth got him thrown in jail. It wasn't the severity of the crime, because even in Tennessee, it's a minor, it's a slap on the wrist. North Carolina, Parker wound up getting, he got some fines, court costs. I think he paid a small fine and 2 years of unsupervised probation. We got another guy named Roger Harris, and he pled out. It was really funny because he pled out the day after Trump got elected in 2016. So nobody noticed it, including us. A couple of months later, I stumbled across it. Oh boy, we got another prosecution. They're very rare. A third one did something called an offered plea. He was a wealthy airline pilot. I don't know what possessed him to do this, but he voted in Florida and North Carolina. And then when we caught him, he tried to blame his wife, and the DA wasn't having it because he signed the documents. And they finally bought off an offered plea, which is neither an admission. It's some weird thing in a North Carolina law. You can look it up. Okay, the other thing about it is media suppression. They don't cover these stories very well, unless, of course, there's a Republican involved. Then you can't avoid it. But the fact is, it's a theme we'll hit over the next 99 days some more. But for today, we'll leave it at that. Now, this is bad news. This is okay. So Mark Meadows is right. Trump is right. What do we do? Okay, this is your mission. If you're a patriot, if you consider yourself a patriot, this is what you have to do, or what you can do. I don't mean to be too directive here, but if you want to work in the election integrity area, these are the things. I'm not going to give a big rundown today, but you have to first off focus on this issue and realize for this election, where we do possibly face the extinction of America, where one side wants to do away with systemic racism. And if you want to know what that means, Google critical race theory, and they want to do away with all Western thought to include inductive reasoning, to include logic, to include the scientific method, to include the judicial system. They want to tear down every structure of oppression. And what will emerge after that? Gee, I wonder if it would be a centralized state control of everything once all the intermediary institutions are destroyed. We'll save that for another day. The point is, you as a patriot, first off, you have to ask yourself, am I a patriot? Will I do what needs to be done? And then finally, remember this. Look, we're not talking about picking up guns. We're talking about monitoring your election. We're talking about studying and knowing more than just how to go vote. but to learn enough about the system that you can prevent others from stealing that vote, and support the politicians who agree that election fraud is a problem that needs to be dealt with. Because right now it's out of control. It's so corrupt. What I see happening is an overwhelming use of fraud in enough states to create such a victory margin that nobody in their right mind would talk about it being as a result of voter fraud. And at that point, we're stuck with what we got. They've rigged it in so many states. I say they, the left, progressives, Democrats. Not all Democrats are bad, don't get me wrong, but the progressives within the system, and some of them are Republicans, have caused us this tipping point in our electoral process. And we've been under a great deal of harassment because of our finding on that. So you can help us out in supporting us, not necessarily financially, but yeah, we could use that too. But certainly visit our website and click on the contribute, but also click the like button on YouTube. Share this. Ultimately, we'll have this up on BitChute and some other places that will maybe prevent big tech from shutting us down. If you're seeing this video, please share it with others. And I will get out of here for today and wish you a blessed day. I'm Jay Delancey, alias Vote Checker, and we're out of here.